The silence following the collapse of high-stakes diplomacy is often the loudest sound in geopolitics, a vacuum filled not by agreement, but by accusation. The shadow of the conflict between the United States and Iran is not a recent phenomenon, it is a deep, tectonic shift rooted in the oil-rich expanse of the Middle East, a history stretching back through Cold War maneuvering, revolutionary fervor, and the relentless pursuit of regional hegemony. To understand the current impasse, the failure of ceasefire negotiations and the subsequent mutual blame, one must first trace the lineage of mistrust that defines this relationship. This is not merely a tactical disagreement over borders or territory, it is a collision between fundamentally incompatible strategic visions, where historical grievances are weaponized, and where the calculus of survival dictates that compromise is perceived as capitulation. The failure of the recent talks signals a critical juncture, revealing that the established frameworks for dialogue are insufficient when the stakes involve existential security and ideological dominance. The immediate breakdown of the ceasefire process reveals a profound disconnect between the stated objectives of the two powers. For the United States, the objective is often framed by a desire to contain proliferation, manage regional stability, and enforce international norms, viewing any cessation of hostilities as a necessary step toward establishing a predictable, albeit tense, equilibrium. Conversely, for Tehran, the calculus is defined by the assertion of sovereignty, the defense of revolutionary legitimacy, and the strategic necessity of leveraging conflict to achieve long-term political and economic leverage against external adversaries. When talks collapse, it is because the underlying assumptions, that one side prioritizes security above all else, and the other prioritizes ideological victory, are irreconcilable. The blame assigned in the aftermath is not simply political theater, it is the inevitable consequence of two competing narratives attempting to impose their reality onto the same contested space, each convinced the other is acting in bad faith. Moving beyond the immediate tactical failure, the geopolitical implications of this rupture reverberate across the entire Middle East landscape. The stability of the region hinges precariously on the management of the energy arteries and the containment of non-state actors. The Strait of Hormuz, the choke point through which a significant portion of the world's seaborne oil flows, remains the central nervous system of this dynamic. Any escalation or collapse of dialogue directly threatens the flow of global energy, introducing massive volatility into international markets and forcing global powers to choose sides in an increasingly complex proxy war. Furthermore, the actions taken by both nations have profound ripple effects on regional rivals. States like Saudi Arabia and Israel view this dynamic not as a bilateral dispute, but as a direct challenge to the established regional order. Their responses, whether through increased military posturing or diplomatic maneuvering, further entrench the conflict, ensuring that the localized dispute is amplified into a wider, intractable regional confrontation where the interests of external powers become inextricably entangled with the fate of the local actors. The economic consequences of this diplomatic paralysis are equally severe and far-reaching. Sanctions regimes, designed to exert pressure, become instruments of mutual damage when diplomatic channels are severed. The freezing and redirection of financial flows, the disruption of trade routes, and the impact on commodity pricing create an economic environment where neither side can afford the luxury of pure military advantage without risking catastrophic economic collapse. The economic impact is felt acutely by the civilian populations caught in the crossfire, who bear the brunt of instability through inflation, supply chain disruption, and the erosion of basic economic security. For the larger global economy, this situation represents a systemic risk, a demonstration that established international mechanisms for conflict resolution are failing, pushing the world further into a state of heightened, unpredictable financial risk. The cost of this standoff is measured not just in lost lives, but in the sustained economic damage inflicted upon the entire region and the global system reliant upon its stability. Looking toward the future, the failure of these talks forces a recalibration of strategic expectations. The current cycle demonstrates that traditional, bilateral negotiation is often insufficient when ideological and security imperatives are this deeply entrenched. The future trajectory will likely be defined by a shift toward more decentralized conflict management, where the influence of non-state actors, transnational networks, and the interplay between regional powers become more decisive than direct superpower engagement. The next phase will test the resilience of existing deterrence strategies and explore novel avenues for managing existential threats without resorting to full-scale confrontation. The challenge for all involved is to move beyond the immediate cycle of blame and recognize that the long-term security of the region depends not on punitive measures, but on the difficult, painstaking reconstruction of a shared understanding of boundaries, legitimate interests, and the inescapable reality of shared vulnerability.